China is the world's biggest auto market, and it will likely sustain the momentum it regained in 2013, helped by demand for cars in the smaller city of China's interior regions. In 2013, sales in China rose almost 14% to about 22 million vehicles, and that's according to the China Association of Automobile Manufacturers. But how are Chinese automakers faring in their own market and in the global auto market? Well, to answer that and more, we're joined by Karl Brauer, senior analyst for Kelley Blue Book. Karl, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
So, Karl, China is the world's largest car market. How much of that market share is dominated by foreign brands as opposed to local Chinese brands?
There's a lot of foreign brands in China because I think they had the momentum in making a lot of these high-end vehicles and a lot of the knowledge in how to produce these cars. There's plenty of volume in the from the local market and from the local automakers. But what's going to be interesting is when this melding of the two kind of happens. A lot of the foreign makers who are selling there are required to share a certain amount of the intellectual property with the local automakers. And I think we're going to see this ongoing melding between the Chinese automakers and what they're offering and the global automakers from Asia, other parts of Asia, as well as Europe and North America. And so we're going to see this melding, and then they're basically going to almost become kind of one.
What do you mean by melding? You're saying to me that Geely Motors is going to partner up with BMW to make a car?
They basically already are, partnered. I mean, a lot of the makers who are selling there to do it have to share a certain amount of the intellectual property and the processes with the home automakers, the Chinese automakers. So they're already kind of. Go ahead.
Karl, in the meantime, Chinese brands are actually struggling to win Chinese consumers. In the first quarter, Geely reported sales that were down 37%. Chery Motors reported a 25% fall. But foreign makers had a considerable increase in revenue. Ford, for example, was up 45% in China. So why are Chinese consumers backing away from Chinese cars?
I think it's because when they're able to be exposed to these global automakers from outside China, they just like the product better. The quality, the prestige that goes with it. There's just a lot of appeal to these foreign automakers for the China market, and they're gaining, and it's forcing the domestics, the home automakers, to really struggle.
But what about outside the Chinese market? Chinese car makers are also struggling to gain traction in markets outside of China. Why is that?
They just don't have the experience, and they're not able to build cars that are on the same level of quality and desirability as other automakers, other global automakers. It's really just a case of the history. These other automakers, the European and Japanese, Korean, and American automakers have more history. They've got more experience building cars, so they've perfected what it takes. And
but Karl, is it perception? Is it perception or is it reality? Are Chinese automakers making inferior quality vehicles, or is it just the perception that they're inferior?
I think it's both. I think there's still a need for improvement in the Chinese product, and there's also this sense that there's more status to driving a non-Chinese car in China. It's funny because it was the same thing in Japan for years. In Japan, even Lexus would struggle against brands like BMW and Mercedes because all the Japanese people felt like when you'd really made it, you didn't buy a Japanese car, you bought a European car.
Well, Chinese automakers Geely, BYD, and Wanxiang have all made investments in establishing or partnering with U.S. entities. Geely purchased Emerald Technologies in February. Geely also purchased Volvo a couple of years back. Are these kind of partnerships the solution for Chinese automakers?
I think they are. I think the long-term plan is to either own these brands or learn from them. They're going to pick up a lot of knowledge, a lot of design, a lot of engineering knowledge that is going to basically kind of transport them up to the competitive level that these other global automakers are already at. And I think really that's what Chinese automakers are trying to do, is they're just trying to rapidly catch up with foreign automakers, and that's why they're requiring so much collaboration when it comes to selling vehicles in their country.
All right. Thank you so much, Karl Brauer, senior analyst for Kelley Blue Book.